over some of these great books that he has. Now, I don't have the cover of this one, but it's The Garden of Abdul-Qazazi. And I wanted to open it just so you can see some of the illustrations, some of his amazing artwork. And this is about a dog and a young boy and a magician. And things go very awry in this book. And I want to get to the page where you see Fritz, because Fritz is an important part. So this is your first introduction to Fritz, and you'll see Fritz in every one of his books, but maybe not always as a living, breathing animal. You'll see him in different ways. So this is The Garden of Abdul-Qazazi. Remember, it's about a magician. You never know what's going to happen when a magician's involved. One of the books that's more recent is called Queen of the Falls. And this is such a fun book and a little unique from all of his books, because in this book, it's more of an autobiography. And he talks about a woman that used to be a teacher. And she ended up, her little school, because you know it's like one-room schoolhouses, ended up being closed and she was out of a job. So she was trying to figure out what she should do. And she decided that she wanted to go over Niagara Falls. And there were very few survivors who had gone over Niagara Falls. And she designed the barrel that would go over. And she had to convince people of her dream. She had to tell them, like, I can do this. And her name was Annie Taylor. I'll show you a real picture of Annie Taylor. This is her. And I know this is a video, but it has a list of successful barrel riders over Niagara Falls. It's not very big. And she went over the falls in the 1800s. So I will show you a couple of pictures from her book. This is her with her one last student before she ends up not having a school anymore. And then this is her in the barrel. It's right before, you can kind of see the barrel up at the top of the falls. And you also can see Fritz in this book. I love this book because this is a strong, strong woman, and she does something that people keep telling her that she cannot do. And her journey into being able to get over those falls is pretty incredible. So it's a great book to share with a classroom. I think you know a lot about the Polar Express, and so I'm not going to talk a lot about the Polar Express. I am going to open to the page in which you see Fritz. And I'm not going to tell you where it is. You will have to figure that one out on your own. But his artwork is just so incredible. The book, The Sweetest Fig, if you didn't like dentists before, you're going to like them. You're going to dislike them even more after reading this book. This is about a really cruel and selfish dentist, and he ends up meeting a woman who is a witch and needs help. And needless to say, he's not very kind to her, and that does come back to haunt him. And as you can see, Fritz is involved in this story as well. It's not always called Fritz, though. There's a French flair to this book. I talked to you about this one, Two Bad Ants, and the artwork is a little different in this one. But again, this is about the journeys of the two bad ants. So I'm just going to quickly go to one page. This is one of the trickier ones to find Fritz. And so I'll just hold it up for a second. But if you want to read about all the things that can go awry when two ants take a journey through the kitchen and get quite a chuckle, that's the book to read. All right, I'm going to move on to two books that are related. Jumanji is one of them, and this is one of my all-time favorite books, and I actually love the movie as well. I think it's incredible that a picture book can be turned into a movie. I think if it's really well written, you can end up with such a great movie. So this is Jumanji. This begins with a board game, and the board game takes a really scary turn. And things happen that, of course, would never happen in real life, but that really leave you kind of at the edge of your seat. And I'm not going to show you where Fritz is in this book. You'll have to get the book to find out for yourself. But I do want to point something out. At the very end of the book, as the parents are talking to the kids, their two friends come over. And they're the Budwing boys, Daniel and Walter. And they're coming here, and they're outside playing. As the kids are listening to the adults, they look outside, and they see the two boys leaving with a board game. And they know this is not a good sign. Well, you might think that that's the end, that's how the book ends. But the book continues with those two characters. And then you have Zathura. So Zathura is like the science fiction side of Jumanji, including the two Budwing boys. And it is really a fun book to read. And this was also made into a movie. Fritz is in this picture, so you might be able to find him. I'll just show you one picture of something that starts to happen. His artwork can really tell the story. But they play this game, and again, they find themselves in some very frightening situations. This book, The Ziwa Zap, is an alphabet book of the Moshini kind. And this is a book kids love to try to guess what's going to happen next. It's written in play form in acts. And the great thing about this is it can really increase vocabulary. It gets them thinking. So I'm going to show you what I mean. The pictures come before the words. And the first time, they won't get it, but they'll start to see there's a pattern, and they'll start your students will start to want to guess what's going to happen. So in this one, the A was in an avalanche. And so you'll say the B, and then they need to try to finish. And you'll turn the page and say the B was badly bitten. And then they'll look at the C, and it builds vocabulary, and it gets them thinking. It really tweaks their imagination, allows them to start trying to figure out what Van Allsburg has come up with next. So I'll just flip through a few of the pages. And if you were paying attention, you already saw Fritz. The next two books that I want to talk about are also kind of a companion pair, but written many years apart. And one of my favorites is called The Mysteries of Harris Burdick. And there's a really cool story that goes with this book. It's in the beginning. If you read through the introduction, it's going to tell you how this book came to be. Chris Van Allsburg says that he was in the home of a man named Peter Wenders. And he was retired, but he used to once work for a book publisher. So people would turn in their stories and their pictures to Peter Wenders. He said 30 years ago, a man came to Peter's office, and his name was Harris Burdick. And he had explained that he had written 14 stories and had drawn pictures for each one. And he had brought with him just one drawing from each of the stories to see if Wender liked the illustrations, and it included a caption as well. So he wanted to see what he thought. Well, Peter Wenders was fascinated by these drawings, and he told them that he would like to read the stories that went with the pictures as soon as possible. So the artist, Harris Burdick, agreed to bring the stories the next morning. He left the 14 drawings with Wender, and he never returned. And so they never found out where Harris Burdick was. But it left this big mystery behind, not only from who Harris Burdick was, but how these stories ended up being written. Because each illustration, with its caption and a little detailed sentence with it, really gets you thinking about what the story might have been about. So he said he had had children coming in and out of his home, and they always were excited to see these, and they would make their own stories up. And I'm going to touch on that when we get to author website as well. So I'd like to show you a couple of them if you don't mind here. This is one of them, and it says, "Missing in Venice. Even with her mighty engines in reverse, the ocean liner was pulled further and further into the canal." Here's another one. "Uninvited guests. His heart was pounding. He was sure he had seen the doorknob turn." How many of us have ever seen that? I don't know about you, but sometimes at night, like if I'm scared, I'm just staring at the doorknob to see if it's turning. Maybe I'm the only one that does that. I want to show you this one for a very specific reason, and not just because I love Halloween. This one says, "Just dessert. She lowered the knife, and it grew even brighter." Now, people often think that this, "just dessert," is a spelling error, because you know dessert is typically, if it's a sweet food that you eat, is spelled with 2 S's. But this comes from a saying, that is, someone got their just desserts, and that means they got what they deserved. So there isn't a spelling error there. That's actually what it's supposed to say. So you can see that there was just some really, really great writing prompts in this book. And then something really exciting happened. Chris Van Allsburg collaborated with other well-known and respected children's authors and authors in general to write a story for each of these prompts. So this is actually called The Chronicles of Harris Burdick. And so you'll see, I'll tell you a few of the people that wrote in this book. John Sheshka was one, Lemony Snicket, Lois Lowry, Kate DiCamillo, Stephen King. So he's got a long list. There's actually a video that goes with this too. It's a book trailer video, and it talks about the Chronicles, and some of the authors talk about it, and they're really funny. But the story of Harris Burdick is very interesting, and Chris Van Allsburg can neither confirm nor deny whether it's true or not. All right, I saved one book for last. This book is called Probudity, and it is hilarious. It is so funny. Probudity, I think it's in Swahili, means awaken. This is about a young boy who, it's his birthday, and his mom gets him tickets to see a hypnotist. And he's always pulling pranks on his sister and making her scream, and, you know, the typical big brother stuff. And by the way, Fritz is in this picture. I don't know if you can see Fritz. So he gets an extra ticket, so he and his buddy go, and they see this famous hypnotist who just makes them laugh, of course, and they think it's hilarious. And then his mom gets to leave to do some things, and he and his friend are asked to watch his younger sister. And let's just say they decide they might want to be hypnotists, and things go awry, and you will have to read it, because in the end, you'll have to figure out, were they really able to hypnotize, or was it all a big joke? I read that book to 6th graders, and not all of them could figure out the ending. So he really does write in a way that can hook people of all ages. So this is the end of the section of the book talk. And the point of the book talk is to get people interested in these books, that they want to pick them up and to read them. And so the next section will be on the author's website.